Did you know that there is an unknown hero of 9/11 and that he is from right here in Central Florida? Well, we're going to talk about that and more on this episode of Charlie Crime Buster, what some people are calling the fastest minutes in podcasting. Well, hello and welcome to a special episode of Charlie Crime Buster. We're releasing this podcast, recording it on the anniversary of 9/11, over 20 years now, 21st anniversary. And my friend, we cannot ever forget what happened on 9/11 on that day in September the 11th, 2001. And on today's episode, you're going to learn about a hero that's unknown to most people regarding 9/11. And you're going to see how he became a hero not once, but twice for 9/11. But first, let me take the time to welcome you to the podcast. If you're a new listener or you have been a part of the wonderful people who follow and download Charlie Crime Buster, thousands of downloads now, well, my friend, you are most welcome and appreciated. Hey, we do hope you'll take the time to leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform. You see, that helps us to get the word out. And, by the way, let me invite you to follow us on Twitter, Facebook as well. I'd like to also give you an invitation to join others by reach out with a shout-out. We would love to hear from you. You can give us suggestions, even disagree with some of the things we say. We still welcome your comments. And you can also suggest other crime stories to cover. Questions? Well, we'll try to answer them. Or if you just want to say hi, you can reach me by emailing charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. That's charliecrimebuster@gmail.com. Well, our story today. You really never know how something as little as doing your duty can impact history. And yet this one man right here in Central Florida, he did his duty. And by all means is a real hero. You're going to hear about that later. Now, by all means, there are a lot of other heroes, too, of 9/11, and we do not overlook them. We cannot forget the brave men and women who actually gave their lives while saving lives on that day. There were 343 firefighters that were killed when the Twin Towers fell on that horrible day. They came from 75 firehouses across the city. Among those killed was the chief of department, Peto Gansey, and the first fireman down that day, it was the fire department's chaplain, Father Micah Judge. Those terrorist attacks on September 11th, well, they also caused more law enforcement line-of-duty deaths than any other single incident in American history. 71 officers died that day. And following that dreadful day, well, now we know that over 242 have died of 9/11 illnesses. Yep, plenty of real heroes in the police and fire department. Hey, add to that now, there have been 2,456 United States military deaths in Afghanistan. That's as we went after the organization that caused 9/11, that killed over 3,000 innocent citizens that day. You see, this is why we are proud of those who have served and continue to serve us today, our law enforcement, first responders, including our firefighters, and our military. Hey, we encourage you to join with us in our support. Join us by joining the Peacemaker Network as a badge supporter. Yep, for as little as $3, you can become a badge supporter today. Join in your support, become a BADGE, badge supporter, by going to peacemakernetwork.com. That's peacemakernetwork.com. You can find there what we are doing right now today to help our heroes, and you can join with us in that support. You see, it might interest you to know that just as the plans and actions of 9/11 terrorists, just as their plans started prior to September 11th, well, our story today, the action of our hero, one of those from Central Florida, it also started 1 month prior to it. And on this special edition, honoring heroes and remembering those that died on that day, well, I'm going to share with you the story. His name, Jose Melendez Perez. Jose Melendez Perez. And I'm going to tell you how that day he stopped one of the destined hijackers from carrying out his part in the attack on America. Also will tell you, how this same man ended up helping take down the most dangerous terrorist of all time. Hey, before we do that, it is time for us to share with you our Crazy Crook Story of the Week. We always try to lighten the load of a Crazy Crook story. By the way, if your significant other calls the police for a domestic dispute, well, you might think twice about maintaining evidence of an outdoor crime, right? Well, that's exactly what happened in Decatur, Michigan. You see, shortly after the police arrived, secured the situation, well, they had to call the Michigan Department of Environmental Conservation conservation officers, and ask them to respond to that location quickly. Well, they arrived. They were escorted to a barn located on the complainant's property. And boy, they were literally floored with what they found inside. Inside hanging 9 buck deer in that barn. Every one of them would be considered a trophy, but hold on. It gets even crazier. You see, they had authority in all domestic disturbance complaints to inspect all the structures on the property. That's to ensure no other individuals, children for instance, are hiding while seeking safety. And with this evidence, the officers there were able to close out many citizens' complaints about a pickup truck driving through the fields while shining lights and shooting deer. That case even got a little crazier, if that's possible. Officers ran a radio check on the man. Seems that this poacher, well, he had a prior record from 2018 for illegally taking and possessing, yep, you got it, white-tailed deer. All that means his hunting license days are history. And he had prior criminal records, includes the possession of meth, third-degree fleeing of a police officer, third offense driving a vehicle while DUI, also a felony. Well, our crazy guy, he was arraigned on November the 9th in local court, was bound over to trial with no bail. And as for those poaching the 9 bucks, well, in addition, his fines and forfeitures, well, they're going to be determined in court. He must pay up to $59,000 in restitution to the state. Michigan, well, they're going to collect that money. So, if you're going to get in a domestic dispute, make sure the evidence is hidden. Else the cops are going to come and the po-po are going to take you to the Pokio, take you to jail. And that, my friend, is our Crazy Crook Story of the Week. Now, from our Crazy Crook story to a very smart law enforcement officer. That comes to us from Orlando, Florida. Yeah, some may call it a hunch, or maybe an instinct. It's that supernatural moment that stops you in your tracks. In law enforcement, well, we often call it your spidey senses. And Jose Melendez Perez, well, he knows the feeling. After all, it was that gut feeling that he had 20 years ago that some believe now changed the course of history, saved thousands of lives. Perez says, that day, as long as I live, I will remember how everything unfolded. 21 years ago, weeks before the 9/11 attacks, August 4th, 2001, well, Melendez Perez, he was working as an immigration inspector. Yep. Right here in Orlando International Airport, down the road from us here in Daytona Beach. He, you see, was conducting secondary screenings of immigrants coming in. Now that day perhaps might have just been uneventful, except on that day, well, Perez, he met a man that said gave him, quote, unquote, the chills. He goes on to say, quote, the first thing that came to me was that he was a hitman. Described him as well-dressed and all black with a military haircut. He goes on to say that he kept looking into my eyes with little black devil eyes. And I thought something is not right. That's what Melendez Perez said. But I did not know what it was because, you see, his passport was good. His visa was good. Now, the other guy that Perez said, and he had spidey senses about, well, he was a Saudi national. He had not properly filled out his customs paperwork. He also, quote, claimed not to speak English. So, as policy dictated, he was sent to the secondary screening for an interview, and there, our unknown hero, Melendez-Perez. Now, these are the words that Perez used describing that encounter. He said, this guy was staring at me. He was giving me a dirty look. So he went on to say, I said something is not right with that individual. That's what he said to himself. And the first question he asked was, why don't you have a return ticket? You see, by law, those who were coming into the country, as this man was, well, they were supposed to have a return ticket. His reply, well, he said, a friend of mine is coming, and my friend will take care of it. That's what he told Perez. So Perez asked him, how long have you known the person? Well, the man said, he said about a week. So Perez, in an interview, he says, you've known this person for a week, and he wants to buy you a $1,800 ticket? Well, that just did not make any sense. Perez said that was his first red flag. But we now know folks, according to investigators, that Melendez-Perez, he was questioning Mohammed Al-Quanti, a Saudi national who was later identified, get this, as the 20th hijacker for the 9/11 attacks. But at this time, now remember, all that Perez knew was that he could trust his gut, and his gut was making all kinds of sounds like something suspicious is going on. He goes on to say that the more questions I asked, the fewer possible answers I could believe. You see, at that time, he would not tell the name of his friend. Hold on to your hats. Because my friend, at the same time that our hero, Melendez-Perez, was questioning Al-Quanti, the lead hijacker of the 9/11 attacks, did you get that? The lead hijacker of the 9/11 attacks, Mohammed Atta. He was there, right there, in Orlando International Airport, waiting for someone to arrive. That someone was Al-Quanti. Now, investigators said that Alta even used an airport payphone to dial a number later associated with the terror attacks. Alta was concerned about his missing passengers. Now, while Alta waited, Melendez-Perez, he then discovered that Al-Quanti, he did not have a return ticket, did not have a hotel reservation, and had $2,800 in cash. And he even could not explain a reason for his visit. Our hero goes on to say that when Perez was asking him questions, the suspicious guy really got upset. He got rude. That's what Melendez-Perez said. When I came out of the interview room, I told my supervisor, this guy is like, he's kind of challenging me. And despite his gut feelings, though, the red flags so far that have been recovered would not have been enough for Melendez-Perez to deny entry to a Saudi national. See, Perez said that these kind of guys face little scrutiny when going through customs. And telling the story now, he says, I'm not sure how it is now, but back then they were almost untouchable. They were our allies, they got the money. Well, then Perez put Al-Quanti under oath. And when that happened, the Saudi national, Al-Quanti, he refused to answer questions. And legally, my friend, that was enough. That was enough to deny him entry. And he goes on to say, when I took him back to the gate, because we weren't going to let him in, he turned to me and another immigration officer, and he said in English, remember he said he couldn't speak English, but now he can speak English. In English, he said something to the effect of, I'll be back. Hey, friend, remember that one. Because this one, my friend, this comment that he'll be back, it turns full circle. It was 5 weeks later that the first plane hit the first tower, and he said, Perez, that gut feeling came back. We were watching as the second plane came crashing, and the first thing he did, he called the airport. He said, pull the file from Al-Quanti, give it to the FBI. You see, here is part one of our hero's accomplishments that day. Because investigators now they believe that Alquante, that he was supposed to be among the hijackers of United Airlines Flight 93, that one that was destined for the capital. But instead of hitting their target, plane crashed in a Pennsylvania field. You see, while the other planes had 5 hijackers, Flight 93 had only 4. You see, that 5th person could have been the difference in the power. It could have kept the passengers from taking down Flight 93 on that infamous day. But get this, folks. You know, Perez, he did not even learn about the role he played all the way until 2004. That's right. 2004, when he was asked to testify before the 911 Commission. And this is what he got from the commission on the day that he testified. He was told these words: "Your actions may well have contributed to saving the Capitol or the White House and all the people who were in those buildings." That is what 911 Commission member Richard Benvesti said at the time. Said that at the time to applause from the crowd, which did include families that were affected by the 9/11 attacks. For that, the commissioner went on to say, "We owe you, my friend, Perez, a debt of thanks and gratitude." Now, some 21 years later, well, that moment, it still makes Melendez Perez emotional. He said, "When I was at my deposition, I had no idea that that was how people were going to respond." Now we have a brief part two of how our hero even saved more lives. But now it is time for us to recognize our courageous citizen of the week. We try to do that weekly. And today, on this day that we remember 9/11, well, we choose to record and release our episode on that day. Well, we want to take time to recognize once again the brave men and women on Flight 93 who charged the cockpit to bring down Flight 93. They were everyday citizens, including an off-duty cop, traveling businessmen, other people, just normal people going about their way. You see, it was about 9:28 a.m. after 46 minutes of a routine flight across Pennsylvania. Well, the terrorists on Flight 93, they overtook the cockpit. They turned the plane southeast. It was on a course directed toward Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Now the passengers, the crew, they were all forced to the back of the plane, told to be quiet. Using airphones, well, passengers and crew began making calls to report the hijacking. And they soon learned the shocking news that the other hijacked planes, and then they realized that Flight 93 was then a part of a larger attack on America. Now that led the folks to get together and make a vote, collective decision to fight back. In just over 30 minutes, this diverse group of people on Flight 93, they developed a plan. They put it into action. Now the cockpit voice recorder, well, it captured the sounds of their struggle. Shouts, screams, calls to action. The sounds of breaking glassware. You see, to stop the uprising, well, the terrorists piloting the aircraft, they began to row it to the left, to the right, pitch the nose up and down. And in the final moments, the plane turned upside down as it passed over rural western Pennsylvania. The terrorists, they remained in control of the plane, but then they chose to crash it, rather than risk the passenger and crew from regaining control of the aircraft. At 10:03 a.m., 21 years ago, Flight 93 plowed into an empty field at the speed of 563 miles per hour. Upon impact, 7,000 gallons of jet fuel on board. The aircraft exploded, creating a ball of fire that rose higher than the trees. The flight data recorder that was recovered from the crash, where it revealed that the terrorists had reprogrammed the aircraft's auto system for a new destination, Washington, D.C. And recovered evidence, response to interrogations, it revealed that the terrorists, well, the intended target, most likely, the United States Capitol building. That's where nation's legislatures were in session. The Flight 93, well, it crashed only 20 minutes flying time from Washington, D.C. Why? Because of the quick and determined actions of passengers and crew. Flight 93 was the only one of the 4 hijacked aircraft that failed to reach the terrorist's intended target that day. These passengers, this crew, well, they showed unity, courage, defiance in the face of adversity. And today, my friend, Charlie Crimebuster recognized those citizens, the crew, they are indeed Charlie Crimebuster's Citizen Heroes of the Week. Now to our second way, our featured hero no doubt saved lives. You see, our hijacker that was not able to take part in 9/11 because of the quick thinking and good security work of Perez, well, he just did not go home and play dead. He went back, and in Afghanistan, he fought alongside our enemies. He was among those who fought our troops in Afghanistan. And get this, he was captured. That's right. Captured in the Battle of Tora Bora. Later, detained at Guantanamo Bay. While there, he revealed a very important piece of information that actually led to the capture-kill of Osama Ben Ladin. You see, he's been cited as the one that revealed the name of Osama Ben Laden's courier. And you remember that now, don't you? That courier who eventually led the CIA to Bin Laden's hideout 10 years after those attacks. And now, Quante, that man that our hero Perez would not let set foot on the United States soil to participate in that great terrorist attack, well, he's still detained at Guantanamo Bay. And today, my friend, when a Customs Border Patrol employee, when he does something outstanding, like thwarting a terrorist attack or helping prevent attack, well, they can now receive an anti-terrorism reward named in part after Inspector Jose Melendez Perez. Well, some might call him a saint. Others may call him a hero, a lifesaver. But here's what Perez calls it. He calls it his purpose. And he says, quote, "I was just doing my job." Well said and well done by our Central Florida 9/11 hero. We at Charlie Crimebuster, we salute him in honor. Now, if you want to join us in putting more than words and supporting our heroes, let me invite you again to PeacemakerNetwork.com. There you can see how we are helping our heroes today. You can become a very important part of it for as little as $3 a month. Less than a cup of coffee these days. So, until this time, next time, this is Charlie Crimebuster encouraging you. Be safe. Be alert. For the life you save, it may be your very own.